coming up to August the 14th, and you had to face facts. Do we go ashore and say the party's over, or do we stay here? Where were you two guys together? Three. I mean, Roger was there as well prior to August the 14th. Were you in the same place at the same time when you decided you were going to go ahead with this? Was it Ronan that talked you into it or asked you if you wanted to stay? Was it Solomon? Where were you when you made that decision? Robbie, start with you if you can.
But both of them. I'd spoken to Ronan and I'd spoken to Solomon. Solomon said, well, the money will be there as long as we've got a team to stick together. And I recall having spoken with all the jocks and the newsreaders a couple of weeks earlier, and we had the support. And then to arrive back to the ship, as we did on that fateful day, with, we mustn't forget him, Spangles Muldoon, Chris Carey, and Johnny and myself, and that was it. That was the rest of them were going to retire early.
And Ross here is news guy as well, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
on
Okay.
that,
there he is.
Yeah, actually, we never got Spangles Muldoon or Chris Carey until about 11:30 p.m. that night. So the tender was out there at lunchtime, and they all walked off, the guys who were going to stay. And I understand their problem. Robbie and I were on shore. We had the most amazing scenes of support. The Baltabrin ballroom we went to, bedecked in flowers, Procol Harum were playing. Queue about half a mile long outside. So enormous support Robbie and I had. But the people out on the ship were just sitting there worrying about what might happen if they decided to carry on broadcasting. So they all left. So there was Ross. We figured he was like half a DJ because he'd never really done a program. So it was Robbie and I, 2.5 DJs, to try and keep going a radio station. Now I remember we had a meeting. We said, what are we going to do? And Robbie said, well, you go on, you do 2 to 6, I'll come on and do my show. And then I remember it was about 3:05, Robbie comes in, tears in his eyes, and said, I've just heard Radio London closed down, and Big Lil played for the last time. And I remember Robbie just said these words, and he was very emotional about it, and he just said, we are now on our own. And at that point I started to think, wow, this is quite a big thing we've got ourselves into here.
Yeah. Ross, when you went out there, I mean, how was it sold to you? Just get out there as quickly as you can because we need you?
Oh, definitely. I was doing mostly the news service, which was a very inventive system that we downloaded the news from the BBC and ITV and then rewrote it so it sounded more like our news, and now and again we'd have news flash from, Port and Story. But I'd been working on 390 when I went over to Radio Caroline, and I was happy to stay with them, but they asked for volunteers to go to the North Ship, so I decided to go to the North Ship.
And there you would have gone on as Freddie Bear.
I did, yes. Yeah, frantic Freddie Bear.
Yeah. And how were things that you was tendered from Dundalk there, were you?
Yes, it was still a Dutch tender, but they went out from Dundalk, but it took anything from 6 to 12 hours to get out to the Caroline North, depending on which way the weather was going, depended on whether the tender boat went round the top of the Isle of Man or came round the bottom, and it could be a pretty rough trip sometimes.